The price of gold is falling. Why? Investments are very serious business. I was in investments for 25 years, and what I learned is that you must know all the facts, and that means knowing all the questions to ask. We're going to look at risk in this video. What are the risks in buying gold? This will be a full report with comprehensive detail. If you're a lightweight and don't have the stomach for it, bail out now. But if you're a serious investor, stick around and get your pen and paper, because you're going to have ideas from this discussion, and you will want to recollect them later. What are you trying to achieve? That's the first question. Start with a clear objective. Is gold the answer? If you haven't listed the questions, then you're not an investor. A gambler maybe, but definitely not a serious investor. As soon as the gambler throws his money into the pot, he starts praying. This ain't no church, so stop praying. This is not a casino either, so stop gambling like a loser. Do you see all those lights and all those properties on the strip? Who do you think pays for them? And all the wages of all the serfs who help the casinos take your money. Gamblers lose enough to pay everyone. If you're a gambler, you're a loser 999 times out of 1,000. Investing means doing research, finding answers to questions, and then deciding on your own without undue influence. One of my viewers, a gold dealer, said the government doesn't have the personnel to take all the gold from the citizens. They already did it in 1933. Where was this gold dealer? Does he read? Government has all the money in the world. Do you know why? Because it's your money. If they need more, they print it. They create it on a ledger and it becomes real and spendable. And of course, by government, I'm not talking about these clowns that you think you elected. The Federal Reserve is the real government. They have a monopoly on the nation's currency. What does this gold dealer mean by they don't have the personnel to seize all the gold? They own the puppet president. They own the Congress, all bought and paid for by the power to print the money. They get the legislation they need to control everything. They have all the records of who bought precious metals, and if they send you a letter, how much does it cost them? They're the government. It costs nothing. They're not the fake government. They're the real government. Unelected and without any concern whatsoever for the people's wishes. They send a letter and demand your gold. Their lawyers put threatening language in there, just as FDR did. Huge fines and jail time if you don't comply. Is this constitutional? Hell no. Gold dealers are predicting that gold will hit $50,000 per ounce. When it does, you can be sure that $50,000 won't buy a sandwich at a fast food restaurant. Government is the biggest threat to everything today. Nothing is safe anymore. They ruined that by using guns, government force, official badges, unconstitutional laws, and threats to your person. Nothing is safe, not even people. Arrests, torture, stripping citizens of their rights, and drones killed that notion. Land of the free no more. And if you don't face this fact, you're not an investor. You have your head in the sand, and you're not qualified to invest anything. You must look at the risks of any investment thoroughly, and government is the biggest risk of all. Because there is no rule of law anymore. We don't have a U.S. Constitution to protect us. It's a gangster government now, and they don't play by anyone's rules. They make it up as they go. So we have gold dealers who are trying to make sense of an investment that makes no sense anymore. Why would you put your money into something that can so easily be taken from you by an unlawful dictatorship? Why would you get on an elevator that's going down? The price of gold is falling. You might want to know why. You can buy some and lose 25% of your wealth over the next 2 years if the next 2 years are like the past 2 years since April of 2012. Today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2014. When the dollar crashes and the banks fail, the truth about the condition of the economy can no longer be held back with propaganda put out by a worthless, corrupt government. They will take your bank accounts regardless of whether you know or not about the priority that derivatives have over your deposits. A bank deposit today is a loan without an application, typically to an insolvent bank whose assets and liabilities you don't know about. So now you're gambling again because you didn't ask any questions. You believed that the FDIC insures your deposits, but you didn't ask any questions about the FDIC, did you? From what I've heard from experts, it's not a matter of if the banks will fail and the fiat currency will collapse in America. It's just a matter of when. Some say soon, some say real soon, and some say real soon. Take your pick. Which expert do you believe? The most optimistic of them are saying soon. Your deposits into banks today are loans from you to the war criminals, and they don't intend to give you the money back after the banks are declared insolvent. The derivatives bubble will burst, no doubt about that. There are 1.5 quadrillion worth of them. That's 1,500 trillion. The GDP of the U.S. is 15 trillion, so this number represents 100 years of GDP. That's the liability of the biggest banks, where all the pension funds are stored. If you were a war criminal, a parasite, and a thief, would you steal their money? $1,500 trillion in derivative liabilities is a lot. Would you say that this balance sheet is good, or would you rather not take the risk of making any deposit into this bank collective? You saw what happened in Cyprus. Cyprus is located between Greece and Syria. There they took the money from depositors. They just took it. That was the trial run. They will be here doing the same soon. They have a plan, and I can prove it. Read the 2005 Bankruptcy Reform Act. If the company you worked for has millions in a pension fund, because a reasonable person reading the law would say that capital is not safe anywhere anymore. Get a clue. Government isn't there to protect you. It's there to take all you have and make you a sovereignless slave. They have their agenda. Where's yours? They've been planning for decades. And if you start right now, you can catch up to them way out there at infinity. And let's see you do it with your money. They're doing things with unlimited money, and where did their money come from? You, of course. Common people are the sole producers of wealth, and the parasites take it from you like beekeepers take honey from the bees. You are much like cattle, and the parasites are the ranchers. You don't stray from the fenced area, or you'll get a cattle prod to bring you back where you belong. You have to support yourself and the parasites that live off you. You are forced at gunpoint to support both. This is like paying your attorney and paying for the attorney of the guy who filed a frivolous lawsuit against you. If you feel that the deck is stacked against you, it's only because the deck is stacked against you and you're finally figuring it out. Do a little reading about gold, and you will discover something ominous that has nothing at all to do with gold. The government can do anything, including take your gold, your silver, your land, your business, all your equipment, and screw your wife while they're at it, because the TSA is already taking your cell phone, your body lotion, and putting their finger up your ass, just to let you know that government has all the power and you are powerless. They have badges of authority and guns of persuasion. How does it feel to have a government's finger up your ass and their gun in your face? It's a rape. Don't resist at the airport. You'll miss your plane. If they put their finger up your ass, go home and record your feelings about it. Make it emotional. If they steal your cash or personal belongings, tell everyone what they did. Capture the details while they are fresh in your mind. If we pile up videos telling others what happened to us, we can begin to push them back and maybe get our Constitution back. Don't allow time to erase the damage done to you. This is like being raped, and that's how it was designed. They did the same thing in Abu Ghraib in Iraq. Make a recording of the humiliation you endured. Put it up on YouTube as a video, so the whole world has a chance to know your experience and what they are doing to us. In Abu Ghraib prison, they did this to soften up the Iraqis and prepare them for total slavery. You didn't object, and now they're doing it here. They studied human nature, then applied what they learned. The conditioning worked there in Iraq. It should work here at home. They turned off the water in Iraq, and now the Iraqis will do whatever they are told. They were conditioned for compliance, and you will be conditioned too. A finger up your ass today and a gun in your face in your own home tomorrow. They raped Andy Perro's mother repeatedly in front of him at age 7, and his father cried as they violated her. This was military, but military is controlled by government. The top brass are 100% on the side of these war criminals who own the puppet president and the Swiss bank account holding Congress and the corrupt and bribed Supreme Court. This is the truth about government today. They kill reporters who go to Iraq to get the truth. Julian Assange brought us the truth about that. We saw it with our own eyes. Now we know. The unconstitutional invasion defied the UN resolution, and the illegal occupation of both Iraq and Afghanistan were okay with you back then. When they murdered and tortured the people over there, you didn't speak out, and now it's over here. They are repeating the crimes on us at home, and it can only get worse, as it did in Nazi Germany. But this time, there are no allied forces to save anyone from the evil and the slavery of a worldwide dictatorship. Iraq has oil, and you have gold and bank deposits. Nothing is safe in America anymore. And if it's not safe in America, then nothing is safe anywhere. In Florida, there was a new law passed. Everyone has to be connected to the power grid, even if you just spent $50,000 on a solar panel system to get off the grid. Some people want to be free of the slavery, but government wants you on the grid. Any idea why? You will soon know why. They want us on the grid so they can turn it off and kill us if we get out of line and start talking about freedom, the Constitution, and secession. Are you astute enough to recognize the clues as to what they have planned? They want us to bank in their banks too. And if you ever try to do anything in real estate without using their banks, they make it very difficult. The assumption is that you're a terrorist, and you have to prove where you got your funds. They treat you like a criminal if you don't trust their banks. They are closing all the exit doors, and the box that you're living in just keeps getting smaller. Your Social Security number is used to track everything you do, and the Social Security card says not to be used for identification. That was the promise, but that's gone, and dictatorship is here in its place. Why do they want us to bank in their banks? So they can steal our money. A bank robber was asked, "Why do you rob banks?" He said, "That's where the money is." Is it a little clearer now what's going on? Jesse James robbed trains and the war criminals robbed Iraq. If there was $950 billion in gold at the World Trade Center buildings, they would have stolen the gold and then done a controlled demolition so they didn't have to give it back. Check the facts. This is what actually happened. The gold is gone. Ask the Kuwaitis. Much of it belonged to them. I'm not making this up. The wise are fleeing the banks. They know what the clues foretell. You want a clue? Look up the 2005 Bankruptcy Reform Act and look up Ellen Brown, attorney. There are YouTube videos. Derivatives have priority over all deposits, including pension funds. What's that all about? It's about taking your money. One of my viewers in Florida said they're doing home sweeps of millions of homes to find gold, guns, and cash, and they're taking all three from citizens, along with anything else the confiscation teams want to take. Do you have a daughter? They could rape her. What are you going to do? Government has badges and guns. What do you have? You have a daughter. It's all of them against you. What are you going to do? They will tell you what to do, and that's what you will do. Everyone wants to be obedient, and so do you. What else can you do? You didn't have a clue. Now their guns are pointed at you. What are you going to do? Fight back? That's what they want you to do, so they can blow away you. Now what are you going to do? It's just like the TSA now at the airport, and your cell phones and other electronic gadgets vanishing, as well as your cash, by thieves who have you under the government gun. Nothing is safe. Nobody is safe anymore. As I said, today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2014. I was watching a video interview with Doug Casey filmed in April of 2012, more than 2 years ago. Bitcoin was not mentioned in this interview, but I looked up the price of Bitcoin in April of 2012, and it was trading at $5.49. In the interview, Doug Casey said that gold was over $1,600. Doug Casey strongly advised viewers to buy gold. Although this pleased the host, who sells gold, this was bad advice. If you had purchased gold, you would have lost 25% of your wealth since April of 2012 because gold is now around $1,200. It fell $400 per ounce. Doug Casey gave some bad advice in 2012, and it's still bad advice, but you wouldn't know it from all the gold dealers who invite Doug Casey on their show to promote investment in gold. Why is gold falling in value relative to the dollar? Is the dollar becoming more valuable? Hell no. The parasites at the unconstitutional Federal Reserve have been printing money like the biggest counterfeiter crooks the world has ever known. When they began the most recent onslaught, the money supply was $800 billion, and they have expanded it. Today, the money supply is over $7 trillion, or nearly 9 times as large. And that means 9 times more for food and everything else. You won't pay $10 per pound for beef, you'll pay $90 per pound. And those who can't afford it will eat beans. If terrorism exists, expanding the money supply like this is real terrorism. But who understands what's being done to them? Doug Casey does, but he's recommending gold, and I think this is not wise. And I'm going to tell you why gold is not safe, and the fall in price proves it. When the money supply is expanded to 9 times as much, the price of gold should be $10,000 per ounce shortly after that. Gold dealers and gold advocates are using figures of $50,000 per ounce. So why is the price of gold not rising? It's actually falling like a rock dropped from a helicopter. Ask anyone who sells gold, what has the price of gold done over the past 2 years? It's falling. Ask them why. You can't inflate the money supply to 9 times what it was without causing Zimbabwe-type runaway inflation. And these thieves at the Fed know it. The price of gold should rise with the money supply, but it's falling. Before you buy gold, you must understand why the price is falling, as the Federal Reserve, a group of private bankers, print money in amounts far, far too excessive to keep prices on anything stable. Food is going up, and so is everything else, yet gold is falling. Why? Were secrets leaked to insiders? When you make investments, you have to ask many questions and find answers that you believe and not trust the guy who's selling the gold. He is a liar. He has profit in mind and he's a salesman. Salesmen lie, governments lie. Government seizes things, and they have already set the precedent in 1933 when FDR ordered private citizens to turn over their gold to a private corporation, the Federal Reserve. This was a crime against the people, and FDR got away with it. It will be done again. Gold seizure was illegal then and unconstitutional as well, but FDR was under orders from the Fed, who really control things in this country, and 178 other countries with central banks, all controlled by the same parasites of the world. Government threatened these citizens of 1933 with jail time and huge fines at the time. Have you noticed that the war criminals who own Obama had an ad campaign to liken him to FDR? What's that all about? It's about the executive order and the gold confiscation that's coming. Don't forget that the war criminals have kept the gold price very low with manipulation. They sold gold short using pieces of paper, not real gold. Those pieces of paper are IOUs for gold, and a gold seizure will cause the price to plummet, and then they can make good on all those IOUs at bargain basement gold prices. They are the guns of government, and they will cause the drop in price of gold and then benefit from it by making good on all their outstanding IOUs. It's fairly easy to see if you have a clue and know what's really going on. The fact that you can't deny is that gold is falling in value. Somebody knows something, and someone is being paid to load you up with gold. Gold dealers don't tell you these things, so why don't you ask them about all the paper out there, which one day will have to be made good. Watch the gold dealer shit in his pants. You can hear his guts exploding as you finish your questions, and he knows it's checkmate. You captured his queen, and the king is finished. There is either going to be a national emergency, and you will be required to hand over the gold, or they will turn off your water and power, and you'll give up the gold voluntarily for enough water to flush your toilet. The pattern is there for all to see. They must take the gold because of all the promises they have put out, using their strength and the power of monopoly over the nation's money supply. Take your head out of the sand and look around you for the sake of protecting your assets. The nightly news isn't bringing you the truth about anything, and that's because it's been seized already. Reporters who tell the truth are not welcome. Ask Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks. He has 1.5 billion views on his YouTube channel, and he has an interesting story to tell about his job as an establishment newscaster. They told him to be more pro-government, and his facts told him that there is information that the people need to know, that government is corrupt and should not be supported by anyone, regardless of how high up they are on the food chain. In my opinion, if government will betray the UN and invade Iraq, and if they tortured people in Iraq once they got there, then they will do the same to conquer us here at home, and that's what's going on at the airports when they force their finger up your ass looking for bombs and terrorists. We need to tell government that we know exactly who the real terrorists are, and it's not these people who fly on jets, it's government. Not those silly so-called officials that many of you think you actually elected. No, the real government is behind the scenes like cowards, and they are controllers. These are the slime and the parasites who feed off us like we belong to another species. They have to be rooted out like parasitic fleas on a cat. Reason this out. If they betray the common people, do you think they will betray all those who helped them set up a worldwide government? If they took our freedoms and privileges away, will they take away the rights and privileges from their minions one day? Anyone who supports them is a traitor, a fool, and needs glasses, because they can't see far ahead. They're suffering from myopia. They will get the dagger in the back. Food prices will quadruple, and then they will quintuple, and double, and then triple, and quadruple once again. A banana will be $50, and the guy with the banana won't want your currency, because although the banana will be spotty in a day or two, the spotty banana will have more value than the $50 in fiat currency. I'd make a milkshake out of a spotty banana, and if I didn't feel like drinking it, I'd freeze it. I'm not forced to take the fiat. What am I going to do with the $50 bill? Wipe my ass? When you're wiping your ass with $50 bills, America and Argentina will have much more in common. Is the inflation and the collapse of the currency a conspiracy? Of course it is. Was Jesse James and his gang a conspiracy? Of course. They conspired to rob trains. That's where the money was. Here's a simple rule that will never fail you. Whenever money is involved, conspiracies grow like mildew in a damp place. Money produces conspiracies like dampness produces mildew. Remember that, and you will always have a clue. Common people will respect what you say and look up to you. If you reject all conspiracies, you're a fool. They don't teach this shit in school, you fool. I find conspiracies everywhere I look. But most of you think that anyone who sees the obvious that's out in the open and recognizes it as a conspiracy is a kook. No, I'm not a nut. I follow the money and I can figure out almost anything. The term conspiracy nut is used by everyone who lives in what Richard Grove calls a terrarium. The terrarium dwellers, TDs for short, don't follow the money, and their vocabulary consists of barely 600 words. My vocabulary has 50,000 words. If the diction fits and is appropriate, I'm not afraid to wield any of these words like a sword. Nobody is going to bully me or cattle prod me back into the terrarium. I found the Stefan Molyneux hole in the fence. Once you step outside, it's difficult to go back to the artificial world of the Richard Grove terrarium. The air outside the terrarium smells fresh and clean. The stale air inside the terrarium smells like farts laced with perfume. I'm never going back into the terrarium, and those of us who have escaped all feel the same way about captivity. We don't like it. Gold to me is captivity. Try to carry it out of the country. The TSA will take away from you as much as they can carry, and their bosses will let them. The badged bully bosses will jump in and take some of your gold too. It will be a shark feeding frenzy at the airport to get your gold. Like pigeons when you toss breadcrumbs. Birds coming in, landing everywhere to feed on the breadcrumbs. Totalitarian cameras overhead will record a mass of blue uniforms sweeping in your direction to get in on the gold bonanza. It will be like 1849, the California gold rush, but this time it will be an airport event. I wish Yogi Berra was here to witness this because this is deja vu all over again. Gold is also very heavy, weighing 19 times as much as water. Don't believe gold dealers who tell you that gold has been money for 6,000 years and therefore you should buy gold. I respond to that foolery by saying this. For 6,000 years we didn't have Bitcoin and now we do. How much does Bitcoin weigh, asshole? People can sell their gold and send Bitcoin around the world free. Turn it back into gold when you get where you're going. And if you like the return on gold, minus 25% in 2 years, stick with gold because you're never going to learn. Do you think the dictators where you're going will be any different than the dictators here at home? The money mafia is worldwide, and gold isn't safe anywhere. That's why the price is falling. The Chinese are much less likely to seize gold, but they did kill kids by the tens of thousands in June of 1989 at Tiananmen Square. Those kids wanted freedom just like you do, and they were shot by the police. I don't trust the Chinese government because that government has a history of killing its own citizens, and so does every other country in the world. We need less government and more freedom to come and go as we wish, and to be private in our financial transactions. No government has the right to seize our wealth, and when it assumes this right, it's time to drop out and secede from their concentration of power. This cuts off their funding, and they can't afford the wars, or the Gestapos, the occupations, and the illegal invasions. Gold has been used as money for 6,000 years, but when the government takes it at gunpoint, gold will be worth as much as a pile of dirt. At that time, the prophecy that says that people will toss their silver into the streets will become a reality. When government takes your gold and silver, the price will drop. They will hand you worthless currency if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, you might get a gallon of water for your bar of gold. I see what's coming, and all the clues are there for you as well. Nobody needs to carry around their wealth in the form of gold at 19 times the weight of water. One person can carry 1 gallon of water, but 19 gallons of water is a bit much. If you have any experience with the precious metals at all, you know that they have tremendous weight for the volume. Gold is difficult for you, but easy to move on carts by minion bullies with badges and guns. You are at a distinct disadvantage because of the weight of gold. The TSA has no constitutional right to touch you at the airport, search your belongings, or take your private property. They have no right to ask you about your bitcoins either, but they do all of this, and what does that tell you? That we live in a totalitarian dictatorship and nothing is safe from the war criminals. They will take your gold as sure as they took $950 billion in gold from the World Trade Center buildings. The Kuwaitis had about $350 billion in gold there, as I recall. And what were they told? They were told it vanished. The Kuwaitis know that gold doesn't just vanish. Well, it did vanish, and the Kuwaitis got experienced. I don't want to say sodomized. They got experienced. And now they don't trust our government. The Germans also got experienced when they asked just to see their gold. They were told, no, you can't see your gold. Sodomized. Now come to America, and what do we have? We have gold, and we have government. And soon they will be joined in holy matrimony of what? Sodomy. When you trust war criminals with gold, don't be surprised if they take it. Government is force, and they will use force to take all that you have, especially gold, because gold has been money for over 6,000 years. Remember? That's what the gold dealers tell you. And then they ask, how much gold do you want to buy from me? I say, none, asshole. Do you think I want to get experienced? Not that fond of sodomy. I don't even like the TSA finger up my ass. If it's valuable and tangible, recognizable, weighs a lot, is taken easily, then I don't want it. I want something with a password, electronic, invisible to most, and I don't want the NSA putting algorithms on all software that captures my passwords and sends them to the TSA because I don't trust government. In other words, Bitcoin is also not safe. Nothing is safe with war criminals in charge. Are you catching on yet? How long will it take for you to recognize the fact that nothing is safe with war criminals in charge? Gold ownership is being tracked. What's the reason? So they know who has it and where to go to take it from them. Besides being difficult to move, gold is risky if you let anyone know you have it. And any attempt to move it out of the country, away from the thieves, will set off a feeding frenzy, and all the customs agents will be taking it from you, after accusing you of being a terrorist. You worked hard, made more than you spent, and now you have some wealth. Wealth attracts war criminals like dog shit attracts flies. Every person on this planet needs to shed their government because they are all the same. No government intends to leave you alone if you have money. This is like asking Bill Clinton to leave the pretty adolescent red-headed girls alone. Clinton would be whipping it out and putting it in their faces like he did with Paula Jones. A lecture isn't going to leave the girls alone, and government can't keep their filthy hands off your gold and silver. It's not going to happen. Face it. If we have no rule of law, then we have nothing. Personally, I think your financial transactions should be private. And what does the Constitution say about this? It says they are private. So why do I have to give my Social Security number and fill out this long form? What did I do? I want my Constitution back and these war criminals gone. I don't believe in terrorism or Al-Qaeda. I think they're both fake and being done by government so they can take the gold. The Social Security number is being used to track our every financial activity, and we're told it's because of the terrorists. Bullshit. They created a terrarium of false reality, and I'm not going for the farts laced with perfume propaganda anymore. We, the people who live outside the terrarium, believe is that all terrorism is done by governments and factions associated with those who hold the power. They are killing little children so they can take from us our freedoms, rights, and the U.S. Constitution, rule of law. Any government that would kill little children in order to pass a law like the Patriot Act or some future gun law wouldn't hesitate to take your gold and your savings in the bank. I'm speaking the truth about gold and bank deposits. Government isn't going to announce that the FDIC has no money to insure a Mickey Mouse watch, let alone your $100,000 on deposit with the banks which belong to the money mafia at the Federal Reserve. All insurance companies are required to have reserves sufficient to cover expected losses, but the FDIC has no money. In 2010, the Federal Reserve listed 2,000 of the 8,400 banks as either insolvent or nearly insolvent. To cover just those deposits of up to $100,000, the FDIC would need $1 trillion. And how much do they have? They have nothing. That's the ugly truth. But the state-controlled media will never tell you that because the same people who own the Federal Reserve also own the media, and they control what you hear, see, and think. In order to have some money, the FDIC billed banks for bank deposit insurance 3 years in advance. Now they have $48 billion. But that's a drop in the bucket if you're looking for $1 trillion in reserves for bank deposit insurance. What if you were billed 3 years in advance on your electric bill or required to pay for gasoline today that you won't use for 3 years? Would that bankrupt you? So there were 2,000 insolvent or nearly insolvent banks before the banks were billed 3 years for worthless FDIC insurance. And how many are insolvent today after being billed 3 years in advance on deposit insurance? Do you understand the significance of that statement? How many insolvent banks do we have now? Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase have liabilities of $70 trillion each, and that's just the risky and unregulated derivatives. A derivative is an insurance policy on the performance of an investment. If I sell you a car and I say, give me $10 a month and I will guarantee to buy the car back from you if it breaks, that's a derivative. And it provides an income to Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase. But if there's a collapse, they don't have the $70 trillion to make good on those promises. And so where will they get the money? If they fail, they take all of the bank deposits because derivatives have priority. They're using your deposits to guarantee those promises to the buyers of those cars. They're actually investments. But think of them as cars. I sell you a car, you pay me $10 a month, and I'm guaranteeing to buy the car back if there's a failure, and I'm using the deposits of innocent people who made a deposit into my bank. This is criminal. But that's the Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2005. With $70 trillion each in liabilities, you might want to know what are the assets of Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase. Their assets are about $500 billion. Which is like you having a business with $10,000 in assets and $1.4 million in debt obligations. The big banks are insolvent, and when they go down, those derivatives will be paid first. If there's anything left, you depositors will be paid maybe. Depositors can get in line behind the derivatives, and I assure you there won't be anything left. All those pensions which are on deposit at the biggest banks will vanish faster than the debris from the World Trade Center buildings as George Bush scurried to destroy the evidence of his false flag terrorist attack on our own soil. Smart people are dumping gold because they know what the executive orders say. They know where America is headed. How many of them have moved out of the country? Doug Casey is in Argentina and sometimes Uruguay. So he's telling you to buy gold here. I don't know why he would do that, do you? They know the plan of the war criminals who own and control everything. Remember, the UN did not approve the invasion of Iraq, and George Bush invaded anyway. We're still there more than a decade later. Bush is a war criminal and so is Obama. If they would invade a country and defy the UN resolution, would they stoop to take your gold? Use your reasoning powers to figure this one out. Gold fell 25% since Doug Casey's April 2012 recommendation for a reason. What is that reason? Was it the strength of the dollar when the BRICS nations are doing deals without the dollar? I don't see any future for the fiat currencies of the world. It costs just 4 cents to make a $100 bill, and the $100 bill won't be worth 4 cents soon. For the parasites, they just create it on a ledger and go out and spend it. It doesn't even cost 4 cents. They can create $100 million as easily as they can create enough to buy a prime location shopping center, and they can steal all the wealth of the world with this monopoly on our nation's currency. This must stop. You have to prove where your money came from, and they don't. And this is bullshit. The crashing of the currency is not a mistake, it's part of a plan. These war criminals think a lot about how to gain more power and control, and they have an agenda. Wake up and smell the bullshit. Gold is falling in price because it's going to be seized one way or another. Americans use 100 gallons of water per day per person on average. And so the war criminals have either purchased water rights or stolen them. My water company suddenly transferred ownership, and so I checked into it. And I found that it was stolen, using some claim that the family that owned it for decades did something wrong, and their livelihood was taken away from them without compensation. The media won't cover the story, or any like it, because the war criminals own all the media, and the free press is gone. Now the criminal cabal can do whatever they want to us, and nobody is going to report it, unless someone like Julian Assange gets a hold of the truth and reveals it to us. The propaganda portrays Julian Assange to be a traitor, but he's not from the U.S. He's an Aussie. He did us a favor by showing us the protected reality of life outside the terrarium. I needed that breath of fresh air because I've been inhaling farts laced with perfume for fart too long. Dave Hodges reports an attempt by John McCain and his war criminal cohorts to steal the homes of 200 people who live on top of a large, underground, freshwater aquifer 30 miles north of Phoenix, Arizona. Am I making this up? If they own the water and they want your gold, can you come up with their plan? What would enable those who own all the water resources to get all the gold? Did you figure it out yet? It only takes 1/10 of a second. You turn off the water and the gold comes in like runners on bases 1, 2, and 3 when the ball is hit deep into left field. Turn off the water and those without gold will die in days. Those with gold will hold out for a very, very short time, not years or months, but days. How can you last without water? You'll be happy to swap a bar of gold for a drink of water. Another bar of gold to flush your toilet, and soon you're out of gold and you die anyway, but your gold is gone. Maybe you've read about the Bush crime family buying up water resources all over the world. Are they aware of the plan? The aliens told us that water will be worth its weight in gold. You will pay $4 for a gallon of water one day, trust me. You can read a recent article about this on the website, War is Crime, one word. It might be a good idea to read every article on war is crime, one word. Go back to the first article ever published on that website, because if you don't know what's going on in the world, this website is one place where you can catch up fast. Read all the articles, and when you finish, go back and read every article again, and maybe you will fully understand what's going on in America and the world today. Michael Snyder, Dave Hodges, and Zen Gardner write articles which are among those at the War is Crime website. When Doug Casey was interviewed in April of 2012, there was no mention of Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin today is around $600. whereas the price of Bitcoin in April of 2012 was $5.49 or so. If you had bought Bitcoin instead of gold, you'd have 100 times as much money instead of a loss of 25% of your wealth by following Doug Casey's advice. Imagine two investors and both have $1 million. One follows the advice of Doug Casey in 2012 and buys gold. Today, June of 2014, that gold investor is no longer a millionaire. He's sitting on just $750,000. He lost $250,000 by following Doug Casey's advice to buy gold. The investor who bought Bitcoin at $5.49, on the other hand, has $109,289,617. He has 145 times as much money as the sucker who bought gold. What will the future be like if Bitcoin will continue to rise in value and gold continues to fall in value? The monopoly of gold as money is over. Bitcoin is weightless, governmentless, central bankless, inflation-proof, and therefore priceless. But you can buy it today for about $600. It's a bargain, and the TSA can't steal it out of your luggage as you go through the Gestapo checkpoint. Let's weigh gold and Bitcoin and see which one has the advantage for those going through customs. Some say Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. Tell me about the intrinsic value of the fiat currency if you don't mind. Ask Peter Schiff to reconcile the fact that gold has been used for money for the past 6,000 years, and government likes the stability of this form of money, and that's a good reason to take it from the people one way or another. Government is force. Government is a gun in your face. Government is a dictatorship. Government today is criminal. Government doesn't care what you want or like. Government tells the puppet president what to do next, and government doesn't need Congress. Government is a monster from the deep. Government is a demon. Government is cruel and lacks a conscience. Government shows no concern for what the people want. They poison your food, your drinking water, and your air. They will take your gold faster than Bill Clinton can whip out his joystick and wave it in the face of some embarrassed young lady. Government is a sleazebag just like Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton called Paula Jones trailer park trash, but Bill Clinton is what? The Clintons are in deep with government, and they are the trailer park trash. Recall whose administration it was in which tungsten cores were put in gold bars by the U.S. Mint. That was Bill Clinton's administration. Are we supposed to believe that he knew nothing about it? This is what government is like. Buy gold and you might get stuck with Clinton's tungsten bars. Tungsten is worth about $1 a pound. Gold has a lot of weight, and it's very difficult to move a lot of gold unnoticed. Ask Peter Schiff if this is his idea of an advantage. Ask Peter Schiff if gold is likely to rise in value when the government starts seizing it by executive order, as FDR did in 1933. Didn't government take all the gold at $20 an ounce and then raise the price to $35 per ounce once they had it all? What happened to the gold that FDR seized with his executive order? It went to a private corporation. Which private corporation? The parasitic Federal Reserve. Are you surprised? Well, don't be. That's where it will go on the next round as well. When Doug Casey advocated the purchase of gold, did he know that the price would fall 25% in just 2 years? Did Doug Casey issue a caveat that some gold bars have tungsten centers? If you're going to follow someone, make sure you maintain a long list of questions. That's how you make sound investments. Was Doug Casey aware of Bitcoin? Why wasn't Doug Casey aware of Bitcoin? And why was it left out of any discussion about money? When did Doug Casey first learn about Bitcoin? If Doug Casey wants to be our favorite guru, he better be on top of it. I think Doug Casey has some explaining to do, don't you? Bitcoin is here and gold is over there. The people now have a choice. What's it going to be for you? What is Doug Casey going to recommend now that he knows about Bitcoin? He missed the boat on Bitcoin like Bill Gates missed the boat on the internet, search engines, and websites like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Wikipedia. Bill Gates was too busy making billions. Many people don't like Bill Gates for the things he has done. I do like Doug Casey, but I can't let him off the hook. He was a gold advocate. Gold fell 25% in price. It should have gone up and it didn't. Doug Casey needs to explain why he caused the loss of 25% when people followed his expert advice. He's an honest man and he knows a lot, but if he recommended the purchase of gold and he was unaware of Bitcoin, he has some explaining to do. One investor has 145 times as much money as the guy who listened to Doug Casey 2 years ago, and both of them started out with the same amount of money, $1 million. Doug Casey is one of the best minds you can listen to today, but he was wrong about buying gold. I think he meant we should get out of the fiat, but gold was certainly not the way to go. Bitcoin might also be the wrong path because when government is evil and underhanded, capital isn't safe anywhere. That's the ugly truth. What Americans need is less government tracking, spying, and interference, and Doug Casey says so. That's why I like him. Bill Gates is on the side of the war criminals, and some will never like him. I remember when he was so powerful that you had to whisper your complaints about him because he would crush you and make your life miserable. Bill Gates is a tyrant, just like the government, and that's perhaps why they get along so well. Remember, when I say government, I'm not talking about these clowns that go to Washington and put on a convincing show for us that they are the real government. This is as false as the terrarium that most of you live in. By government, I mean the Federal Reserve. They hold all the power. Money is what makes someone powerful. The parasitic Federal Reserve has a monopoly on the nation's currency, and this has to end or we're all dead. We pay for everything and we get nothing. Only what we need in order to continue being slaves. Science has come a long way over the past few decades, and most of the plethora of benefits are not going to us but to the war criminals. They use science to kill people, control people, enslave people, and 9/11 was one example. It was a false flag event and the Patriot Act followed, stripping us of our Bill of Rights. The parasites have a new weapon and they haven't bothered to tell us about it on the nightly news, so we are left out of the most recent developments, even though we paid all the costs of development. Governments grow increasingly more selfish and exploitative as time passes, and nothing could turn this around except you. Your personal actions are what we need most. Find the truth and spread it. Truth is the fluoride rat poison in the drinking water of the war criminals. They develop the technologies and use them on us, and we discover them and tell all. Government can't keep a secret, because those minions in key positions can see where this is all going, and they turn whistleblower. Government calls them traitors and makes their lives miserable. But I think John Kerry is a traitor. Obama is a traitor. Harry Reid is a traitor. Barbara Feinstein is a traitor. Everyone who most recently voted to continue the Patriot Act is a traitor. Members of Congress who voted for the NDAA are all traitors, regardless of their excuses. They all know what the U.S. Constitution says. They can't be that naive. Bribes make them naive. Like a burglar who's caught in the house with burglar tools and has to come up with a reason for his being there, those in Congress search for a reason to vote to continue the Patriot Act. Some of us can see through them like they were glass in the windscreen of your car. The National Sheriff's Association has made a bold move. They said, in essence, we're not going to enforce any law which is unconstitutional. That bold statement nullifies the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is on the side of the war criminals, and they have proven it again and again. Do you recall the penalty in the health care plan? I'm talking about Obamacare, the law that was forced on us like a rapist forces sex on a woman. At the time it was a bill, 70% of us didn't want the government to take over the healthcare industry. Recall that nobody in Congress read that bill. Nobody. They just signed it, passed it, and now it's law. The companies in the healthcare industry that wrote that law included a penalty for anyone who doesn't buy health insurance. It was a penalty, not a tax, a penalty. What part of penalty doesn't the Supreme Court understand? It wasn't a tax, it was a penalty. The corrupt Supreme Court knew that Obamacare was unconstitutional, so they justified an unconstitutional law by calling it a tax and adjourned to collect their bribes and make a deposit into the Swiss bank. One day Swiss bank accounts will be publicized and the Supreme Court is in deep shit. So is Congress. All the elected officials need to be concerned, and people like Harry Reid and Barbara Feinstein better fear the truth coming out. I think it's clear that they are crooks. Barbara Feinstein has a net worth today of over $200 million. Does she have skeletons in the closet? I think she does. Why don't the people ask for an investigation on those who have acquired so much wealth in their public servant positions? Harry Reid is reporting a net worth of $10 million. Where did it come from? Is he a terrorist? Quick, somebody put a finger up his ass. He didn't have much money when he started taking bribes. What will we find when we get out the magnifying glass and start asking Harry Reid some pertinent questions? Why can't we ask for polygraph tests on the bastards every month? We can question them every month at first, and then as they increase the locations of the TSA, we should do the lie detector tests weekly just to keep the dirty bastards honest. The people in the fake government in Washington are allowed to plunder as long as they support the totalitarian regime of the Federal Reserve. Get out of line and one of the state-controlled media will get a leak, and it won't be kind to Harry Reid or Barbara Feinstein. So the Federal Reserve can count on both of them and many others, including the Supreme Court, to toe the line of the money mafia. Now back to gold. Government has satellites that can see where your guns are in your house. I don't know how it works, but it can send a signal down some wavelength in the electromagnetic spectrum. It bounces back to the satellite, and they can see if you have guns and where those guns are. In the gun sweeps, they'll tell the military where your guns are. Those who invade your private homes will not have warrants, which the Constitution says they must have, and illegal searches and seizures are not allowed. That's why the despotic rulers had to set the Constitution aside with one law after another. But the National Sheriff's Association said publicly, we will not enforce NDAA or any other law which is unconstitutional. So we the people have the sheriffs on our side. But the war criminals will use their own forces, something like the TSA. If we the people don't get a clue what's happening in this country, we're going to be looking back on all the clues that should have made us aware a long time ago. You won't find clues on the nightly news. The parasitic war criminals don't broadcast what they are doing. Instead, they classify everything and then spray the air with chemicals that make it difficult to think, while they complete the final stages of the total takeover. Gold is just one of the indicators that tips you off. Falling prices is not what you'd expect, but still the gold prices are falling. Why? When the money supply is expanded, gold prices should be increasing because of inflation. So why is the price of gold in dollars falling? Because those who have it know that it will be confiscated, and they don't want to be forced to give up gold and accept fiat in its place. If you accept my explanation, then you have to consider how badly we need a federal government that takes our private property from us. It's clear and obvious that we need to fire them, and the best way to do that is by seceding from the federal union where we have no rights and declare our states free, and then we might return to the U.S. Constitution where we will have the rule of law once again with rights restored. We don't need to be at war every year. We have been at war every year since 1944, and we don't need the costs of $2 trillion per war. What we need is peace and prosperity once again, and I don't see it if our wealth is taken from us by an illegitimate and criminal federal government. If states are too cowardly to secede, or if the leaders have been bribed, then they should at least coin some gold to be used instead of the fiat, which will soon be completely worthless with all the counterfeiting going on at the Federal Reserve. Foreigners are holding about $8 trillion in U.S. dollars according to Doug Casey. They could buy U.S. farmland, water resources, gold, homes in Detroit, land in Africa, or they could buy Bitcoin. If they buy Bitcoin, there is a limited supply of them, and that means as money goes in, the price of each Bitcoin goes up. Whereas the fiat currency market traffic, called Forex, is over $4 trillion per day, Bitcoin has a volume so small that if you graph it with the Forex volume, you would not be able to see anything on the graph for Bitcoin. Add up all the fiat currencies in the world and then compare that with $7 billion in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still very puny, and I think a sharp rise in price is likely. But you need to contact Doug Casey to see if he agrees with me and what his best argument is for his assessment. You might ask him what happened in 2012 when he recommended the purchase of gold and didn't mention Bitcoin back then. You can see that any money flowing into Bitcoin from anywhere, gold, fiat, stocks, bonds, or real estate, would send Bitcoin to $10,000 per coin in no time. I don't believe in gold, and I think the biggest threat to Bitcoin is government. When government isn't just and fair, nothing is safe. Capital is not safe. People are not safe. Your daughters are not safe. Your personal belongings are not safe at the TSA Gestapo checkpoints. Nothing is safe anywhere. We must have the rule of law to be safe, and that has vanished. Cops stop you and take all your cash. They're highwaymen, and it's a robber society now. When Wyatt Earp and his brothers became lawmen in the Arizona Territory, one of the brothers became stagecoach driver for Wells Fargo. What happens when law enforcement is the same family as the stagecoach driver? How convenient. Do you smell conspiracy? Okay, hold on. All they needed was someone inside the Wells Fargo system to tip them off as to the shipments of gold and cash, and they had access to anything of value being moved from one place to another, and that person was Barshel Williams. Just before he died, he made a deathbed confession in hopes of getting mercy from God for being part of an organized crime syndicate way back in the 1880s. He revealed that the Earps were robbing stagecoaches for years. Power corrupts, and if there's power, there is corruption. I'll bet my life on it. Actually, we're all betting our lives on it, and we're right, but we're losing our lives and our wealth anyway because it's being taken from us. We don't need any large-scale government because it always leads to large-scale corruption. We need to start breaking up the power blocks, which are concentrated into the hands of far too few. We need to expose their deeds for all to see. and we need to make changes so that we don't ever put much power into the hands of any individual again. That's what we need. Karen Hudis is a World Bank attorney turned whistleblower. She can tell you about the super entity comprised mostly of banks which have control over almost everything of significant value, and their plans are to take the rest as well. Get informed and tell others what you find. This struggle is about words, not gold or guns. Thanks for listening.